Hey guys, well, this is a spur of moment stream. As you see, we got Peaceful Banana and we got Taylor here, and we're going to be reacting to Toronto Bible's reaction to Peaceful Banana's reaction. There's other reactions we can mention that are in this chain reaction, but
wait,
we'll just
is
keep
it a reaction or a presentation?
It's well, it's a present. You're right. Your book, your reaction. Let me put it this way: your presentation is a reaction to the book.
Okay, and Mike is reacting to that reaction, and we're reacting to that. Hopefully, Mike actually continue the chain. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. That'll give us, things to dialogue with on. Hey, Sawako. Okay. So first off, have y'all seen this video yet? Any of it? I saw like 30 seconds, and he said this is dumb in like the first 30 seconds. I think it was. I'm actually exaggerating.
Yeah. So, I watched like 5 minutes of it, and I was just disappointed because he just said, "Foolishness, man. This is dumb. Sounds ridiculous. You just posted a lot of scriptures, but you didn't. I don't know, man. It's kind of, I don't know." Basically that.
Taylor, what about you?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay. All right. So let me share my screen real quick, and I want to talk about the thumbnail I made, thanks to our very intelligent AI. So, y'all know the movie Dazed and Confused, right? Whoa, wrong slide. Hold on. It's sharing the wrong monitor.
I like that the title also includes "man" at the end of it.
Yeah, I didn't know the proper way to spell man, so I spelled it differently in the title and in the thumbnail. But yeah, the stoner movie Dazed and Confused. I was first exposed to it in the 90s. Not sure exactly when it came out with Sean Penn and all that, but it talks about kids in the 70s and stuff. And so what it did was I typed in Dazed and Confused, right? About dispensationalism. It didn't pick all the words yet, but it went with the Dazed and Confused stuff and like the movie, but then it showed different people sort of similar to the characters. And I was like, remove those, replace with one Indian man who looks like a stoner wearing looks like he's wearing 90s stoner clothes, and then put in the backdrop Toronto going through a storm. And
got you.
That's what we got.
And make PB look jacked.
Well, that was PB's AI. I just carried it over from the thumbnail. So yeah.
PB, when you made the AI, how did you tell him make me look like I benched? How much weight did you tell it to put?
Look, I just showed them a picture of myself, and it did the rest of the work. I didn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You got that membership, the membership AI.
Okay, guys. So we got that done. Now the next thing I want to share is I want to, I got to give Toronto his props, because Toronto is an academic. I don't know if he's operating like an academic, but here's his academia edu. We both have a graduate in sociology. He's interested in criminology. That's interesting. But I took like one criminology class. I took some deviant behavior and stuff like that. But look, guys, he's got 7 papers and 16 drafts. So just for a moment before we get into this, let's look at the titles and let's just talk in general about what comes to your mind when you see this title. Okay? Faith Beyond Reason, or Faith Within Reason, on Kierkegaard. Any thoughts?
I mean,
sounds apologetic.
Yeah, it sounds pretty apologetic.
Yeah, or philosophical. Okay. Look at this one. First Peter.
I don't know who Kierkegaard is. Do you know who that guy is?
Kierkegaard, philosopher. If I remember right, he's the one of the existentialists. I can't remember exactly. But so Peter suffering righteously for the glory of God. What about that one, guys?
Sounds like possibly a commentary or like a book survey, which honestly might be actually pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. He's done a book review. The Challenge of Jesus, discovering who Jesus was and is. And that's a review of N.T. Wright's introduction to the quest for the historical Jesus.
Yeah, another apologetic.
Right.
Thing.
But look,
Go ahead.
it's a review.
Yeah, book review.
I bet you his review doesn't say, this is dumb, man. You know, I doubt that's in there. Okay. The next one. Response to Can We Be Good Without God? William Lane Craig. I guess he's interacting with that idea. Yeah. On case studies and conspiracy theories. Are you surprised about that one?
Oh no. Oh no.
No, but I'm going to read that one. That's nice.
I wonder if he wrote it while he was in seminary, or this is something after he graduated. Or some of this might be undergraduate. I don't know. I haven't looked that close yet. Look at this one. What can government agencies do to help address the issues of crime? Nothing. Thank you very much. Criminology, sociology paper. That's what that sounds like. Jury nullification, a simple favor. What's that mean? You want to get rid of the jury? That's criminology, sounds like. Now here's some of his drafts. Psalms 18, the Lord is my rock. Any thoughts about that one?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like First Peter, either doing a survey or a review.
Okay.
Commentary.
All right. Look at this one. I'm not going to say it, but what happened in 2020 in the church? Truth versus technocracy at the end of the age. So that's got to be recent, at least of 2020. And we won't comment on that one. Then you got Islam in the 21st century, clash of civilizations enabled by the state. More apologetic, right? This one hits close to home for him. Islam in Canada, clash of civilizations enabled by the state. Oh, that's conspiracy. You see that? Enabled by the state.
Yep.
Okay. Sacrifice to devils. In chapter 10, verse 14 of Paul's first epistle to the Corinthians. Oh, that may be interesting there. Hermeneutics of love. Examining Christ's use of plerosai in Matthew 5:17 about fulfilling the law or whatever. King James Version, Sword of the King, PDF. So he wrote a book on the King James, I guess. Book review, 2 views on homosexual in the Bible and the church. Look at this. The Joint Declaration on the Doctrine of Justification, the Politics of Theology. So this is by the Lutheran World Federation. He was evaluating that. Reflections on the Anthropology of Genesis 3. That's interesting. He did looks like this is probably a text or critical paper. The pericope of adultery. So that is John 8. And then we got a defective perspective, Nietzsche's failed epistemology, philosophical. Then you got this, faith over reason or faith beyond reason. He went back to the Kierkegaard stuff. Look at this one, the Gospel according to Luke, a literary analysis. When I see that, I have a high expectation of what that would be like, you know? And then what has Jerusalem to do with Athens? Flip side of the same coin. Instead of what has Athens to do with Jerusalem. So it's about the Jews, man, right?
So about the Jews.
Mercy and Justice, an analysis of Exodus 34, 1 and 9. So there's some things in here that I would like to read. And if I see, you know, how he does in the languages, it'll help me understand him a little bit better and appreciate him a little bit better. Okay. So, our challenge for today, though, is to evaluate your work. Oh, there's Dit. Hey, Dit. Hey, Jason. Hey, SP. So, SP was upset with us, and then he's recognized that we're not Hyper Grace now, so he's back. So that's good.
Okay.
All right, PB, since this is your video, we want you to speak for yourself. But Taylor, I want you to speak up anytime something comes to your mind too. I need to turn the sound off.
All right.
So yeah, this is not an extensive analysis. We're mainly reacting to Toronto's treatment of you. Okay, of your presentation. Let's put it that way. Here we go.
So this is the first one of
Yes.
PB's present. Okay.
And see, if he watches this before he watches the next one, then maybe he'll have a better informed understanding, of that. So this is a way we can interact with him and he with us, going forward.
Yeah.
Just for starters, I wanted to be clear that the New Covenant is one of the most important topics in the Bible. I think it determines a lot of how you interpret the Bible. I think it's sort of a culmination of how you understand biblical theology. But unfortunately, there's no actual formal class on it. This is not a formal class. This is an inductive evaluation of the New Covenant from a dispensationalist perspective. And what that means is that we go Old Testament forward rather than New Testament backwards. So if you come from a sort of modern
So here's my thought right now already.
Yeah.
You opened up in a very professional way.
Yeah.
You gave your perspective. You talked about the uniqueness of this, that you're not typically going to have a seminary class on the New Covenant. So those are opportunities he had to commend you. But let's see what he does.
Okay.
The only reason I think it might be actually Chris is because he actually knew that thing about the Trinity.
I don't think this has anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Who used the
Let me turn the speed up.
term Trinity first or whatever, and so
Tertullian.
the fact that he knew that, because he kind of knows about those things. He always debates the Trinity and stuff. So it's kind of interesting, that aspect of it. Anyway.
Modern Christianity, covenant theology perspective, then you're going to go New Testament backward, right? You're going to think that God reinterprets stuff, that the New Testament authors are using stuff.
So he's not in. I don't know if he's not into the comments or what you're saying. Like, is he recognizing that you're right about that? That typically, dispensationalists go Old Testament forward, and everybody else goes New Testament priority. I don't know.
I think he comments on that like in a short while, and then he comments on a few other stuff. I didn't make it too far into it, but from what I remember, I think he comments about that hermeneutic or that style. So
yeah, it seems like he's not as engaged with your presentation at this moment as he is them talking about the Chris guy and the Trinity thing, whatever that is.
In different ways than was originally intended. And so then that sort of gives you free reign depending on how you understand hermeneutics, right? But
So he heard the word hermeneutics. So now he's going to pipe up.
Right, you're going to think that God reinterprets stuff, that the New Testament authors are using stuff in different ways than was originally intended. And so then that sort of gives you free reign depending on how you understand hermeneutics, right? But the credit does not go to me, ultimately. It goes to the authors of this book that we're going to get into in the future, and Christopher Cohn, the general editor of the book. So I highly recommend you read that book to get a better overview of some of these concepts.
Once again, you're being professional. You're giving... You're shooting. You're not shooting out. You're giving a shout out to the authors. Appreciation and all that. You're making other people want to go check out those resources. But he's not commending you on this.
Well, I mean,
All right.
it's no fault of his own. He's just he might not be as a gaze. Maybe something
He's
else
just
happened.
now
In the
tuning in
comments.
right now. He's just now tuning in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just now tuning in. So
Right. Right. But remember, he's dazed and confused about dispensationalism.
yes,
So I'm waiting to see where the confusion sets in. The daze we already knows. I think he brings the dazedness to the table. You know, he wakes up dazed. But the confused part is he titled this video "Dispensationalism is Confusing." So let's see if it's really confusing or if it's really just being gaslighted.
Otherwise, this is more like a review in a way. Now, here's some things that we have to understand for laying the groundwork of the new covenant. The main text that everyone goes to, Jeremiah.
Let me say this, PB. The fact that you've completed an entire series on a book this advanced with this professional PowerPoints and all of this, that's no small feat, man. And you've written a paper recently about what is free grace. And you're teaching in the Discord and you're helping in all that type of stuff. You know, so I'm amazed at what you've been able to do just over what a month, or has it been it hasn't even been a year yet, right?
well, in terms of this presentation, it's just been 3 months. So yeah,
Wow. Yeah. And then you were doing the PB Reacts before that. So
yeah, and I'm gonna continue that after the
Great.
presentation series is over. I mean, now of course I did want to do other stuff also, but you know I'll
Well,
probably continue.
you can have more than one day, you know. You just got to let me know what you're able to do in light of your schoolwork and and all that stuff.
Yeah. Usually Tuesdays are a good day overall, but there could be another day in the future where I have more time. It just depends.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Taylor reeled in too.
Taylor needs to be locked in, man. I mean, come on.
I know.
I think
Well,
Taylor Taylor might do a good Ask Free Grace. Because we don't even do that program anymore. It's for those that don't know, Ask Free Grace and Free Grace Reacts, I'm slowly going back through and I'm changing all of that to Free Grace Interacts, because Interacts includes asking questions, reacting to videos, calling people to pull up, whatever it may be. And it just simplifies things as far as about seeing all that. But if we want to have a strict Q&A thing, and Taylor was the one that started the Ask Free Grace with Janet. They were the first ones. Janet stepped out there and Taylor pulled up. So just an idea. But anyway, moving forward.
Yeah, you can if you're. I think you can if you're like. I think these mods can do it. That's why they can do it. Anyway.
Yeah, he's distracted by all that.
Yeah, exactly. They can't explain anything, bro. There's many things. There's many things they cannot explain. They act like they have it all figured out.
Flat Earth. Talk about
Haruzen. Oh, he's talking about round earthers can't explain the firmament. Okay.
Oh yeah. By the way, Haruzen is probably flat Earth now. Probably. He said some interesting comments about that when he was reading Genesis, and he's talking to Mike about it. So I think he's leaning that direction from what I heard.
And see, that's the problem. If you lean on flat Earth, you might fall off. I know that's a joke because I know that they don't really believe that, but
That they don't. They can't explain many things. Their theory is dumb. Anyway, let's go.
Okay, so there's my misunderstanding. I essentially, my first time listening to this, I thought he was calling your video dumb, and that that who can't explain is the dispensationalists. I didn't see the flat Earth comment, so that maybe this video is more positive than I thought. Let's see.
Yeah,
31, that one's pretty obvious, and the readers immediately put on notice that in the future, the Lord Yahweh of Israel will make a certain set of promises to the people of Israel and Judah. So Judah is the southern kingdom, Israel is the northern kingdom. the 10 tribes versus the 2 tribes. And these are distinct from the promises of the Mosaic covenant, and they were unable to keep them and thus suffered judgment. God himself takes the initiative in this covenant because he says, I will and I shall 9 times. 9 times throughout the whole series of verses, 4 verses. And of significance is the fact that he will put his law in their hearts, he will forgive their sins, and he will make it unnecessary to teach one another to know God. This would be especially significant considering, in the context of the book, Israel had been in exile for hundreds of years since the Assyrian captivity in 722, and Judah was on the verge of being overcome by the Babylonians in around 586 BC. And since they were all
Great job of explaining all of this right here. You make it real easy to understand.
concerned, oh well, how's the nation going to survive?
Go ahead.
Well, hopefully Toronto understood that, because he's not really engaging too much with it right now. I think he rarely engages with it, which is not really much of a reaction, but
Yeah.
He gives them a promise in 35-37 that if you could move the planets from me, then you would disappear from the face of the earth. But that hasn't happened yet, so therefore Israel still exists. Which by this, they were all concerned. Oh well, how is the nation going to survive?
Wait, what?
Wait, what? What are you going to say, Button?
What do you mean the planets are going to get moved? Is he going to say something like that? Let's see.
He gives them a promise in 35-37 that if you could move the planets from me, then
the sun and the moon. He'd probably say, "Those are not planets, man." Let's see what he says.
You would disappear from the face of the earth, but that hasn't happened yet, so therefore Israel still exists. Which, by the side point, that's actually a good proof of Christianity, considering no other nation has existed like that, where they still have their identity after hundreds of years.
See, he's still reading something in the chat, so I don't know what the what was related to, because he didn't comment on it that time.
Yeah, maybe he didn't. Maybe he just wanted to go back and just re-listen to it and understand what was said. Probably that.
Okay.
So now most commentators understand Ezekiel and Jeremiah to be talking about the same thing and same set of events, but Jeremiah gives a more in-depth explanation, whereas Ezekiel gives the timing of the covenant. Verse 20 in 36-24, he puts it into effect when he takes the Jews from their exile. So they would be exiled. He's taking them from the exile. This is not the Babylonian captivity, as we're going to get into. Number 20, verse 25, he'll sprinkle clean water on them, and this would be a metaphor for spiritual renewal along with the regathering. Verses 26-27.
He's slowing it down. He's slowing it down. He's honing in.
Locked in right now.
Says he will put a new heart and a new spirit with them. That's not any sort of ontological language. That means that they won't be rebellious anymore. They'll have a united mind.
What does Saruzen's comment say? They're talking or about the remnant. They became part of the new covenant.
Yeah. Okay. So he's
talking about the remnant. They become part of the new covenant. Okay, go ahead. Explain that.
So I think what he's trying to say is that Ezekiel 36 is talking about the remnant of Israel that become part of the new covenant. And I guess that's for him supposed to be like a growing thing over time. But I don't Ezekiel doesn't really say that it's like a growing exponential thing. And in fact, a lot of Jews today don't even believe in Jesus. So I don't know how Ezekiel 36 could be fulfilled today. I mean, I would say it's fulfilled in the tribulation, but yeah.
Okay.
Kind of stuff. You see that in chapter 37 as well. And verse 28 affirms that they will all live in the land promised to their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You see that in Genesis chapter 12 all the way to Genesis chapter around 27 to 28, right, where he reaffirms that to those.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny too? If you look at 31, 38, or sorry, 31, 37. Thus saith the Lord, if heaven above can be measured, the foundations of the earth searched out beneath. I'll also cast off the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Lord. Oh, is this saying they can't be measured? Okay. Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon and of the stars for a light by night. Divideth the sea. If the ordinance depart from me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. The seed of Israel.
Let me pause it. So he's thinking about it.
A light bulb popped off in his head. He's like, wait, hold on a second. Maybe replacement technology is not true. I
don't think it's going to be that easy. Hey, 8033, 802033. Oh no, I hope you're not predicting things. Okay.
Israel. The seed of Israel. Interesting.
Those promises to the fathers. Right? All right. Now, if you are an unbiased reader,
Look at this. Land equals the presence of God.
That's crazy.
I told you about this, Taylor. I'm just gonna. If anyone's listening to this out there, if this is how you interpret the Bible, where you just say that the land means whatever you want it to mean, then please stop talking about the Bible. Like, please, like, I don't know, go on a mountain journey. What does that mean? The land equals the presence of God? That doesn't even make sense. Land equals land.
Right. God was present in the land through the tabernacle and the temple. You know, you could say that, but that doesn't mean the land is the presence of God.
Yeah, and what does it mean? The land promised to their fathers. What I mean is that not the land of Canaan? I mean, yeah, it's just weird to get around it.
Well, if you take the land as the presence of God, and the land is only promised to certain people, that would lead to an unconditional election. In other words, not everybody could be saved. It wouldn't necessarily be temporal, but it would mean that only those that are given the Abrahamic covenant, the land promise, which is the presence of God, are saved. So I think that undermines free grace from his perspective. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You better get better arguments.
of the Old Testament. No New Testament at all, although I'll explain the significance of the New Testament. The meaning is abundantly clear that the Israelites who failed to keep the Old Covenant were suffering the consequences. And so therefore God is going to make a new covenant for the sake of his own glory, so that he can keep the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob about their land, their physical land promises. And he's going to enable them to keep his commandments. He's going to put his law into their hearts. He's going to remove the curse from their land.
Wait. I don't understand. Okay.
So when he says, I don't understand, let's see if that's really what it is. Is it something he doesn't understand or that he doesn't accept? Let's be listening for that.
So the unbiased reader is learning that
there's no such thing as an unbiased reader.
Yeah, now that's technically what the author said. So Grant Gilley, I was taking his language of unbiased reader. In reality, there is no unbiased reader. But if you're just reading the Old Testament, this is probably what the conclusion you'd come to.
Right. Yeah, that's your Old Testament frame of reference.
Yeah.
Why would we think it's about the land though? Like, why would we think that?
What's about the land?
Because it says it.
You know, but what when he says what makes us think it's about the land? What is the it that he's referring to?
The covenant, the passages. Probably.
Which covenant? Which passages?
New Covenant and Jeremiah 31 and Ezekiel.
How does the New Covenant refer to the land?
The New Covenant does not refer to the land. The New Covenant is so they can be in the land.
Okay.
But,
or is the New Covenant blessings experienced while they're in the land?
I mean, it can be both.
Experiential quality of life in the kingdom.
Yeah, it's really for that.
Okay.
But the thing is like, what does he mean? Why does like it talking? I assume he's talking about the passages. The passages are talking about the land. So.
Well, I mean, Genesis 15 tells you the land boundaries. So I don't know where he's going to go with this.
I'll put my law in the inward parts. I mean, what part of Jeremiah 31 is going to lead me to think that he's about the land? Why would that be?
So he had the same question as me.
Jeremiah 31 doesn't mention the land. Ezekiel 36 does. And I basically just said, okay, these are talking about the same thing. They take place at the same time. And so it's related to the land. That's basically as much as I said.
Right. And also the Mosaic covenant regulated things in the land.
Yeah.
And it regulated while they were outside the land too, but it regulated in the land. So the new covenant has to function in a similar way. Okay.
Yeah. That's the idea.
All right.
So weird.
Give them the power to obey. And this all together is what we call messianic salvation, which is also derived from the Davidic covenant where he comes back into the throne, but that's not in this passage. And this is also the part of the kingdom promised to Israel. See this in Isaiah 9, Isaiah 45, verse 17, Isaiah 46, verse 13, and Daniel chapter 2, verse 40.
Wait, I don't understand. Wait. To an unbiased reader of the OT law, and the meaning of is that the Israelites have failed to keep the old covenant and were suffering the consequences. I will make a new covenant with Israel for the sake of his own glory, and to keep the promises he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So the new covenant is about the promises he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm shocked
Yeah.
that he doesn't know this. The Abrahamic covenant, 3 things: land, seed, and blessing. The sub-covenants. So the land covenant, Deuteronomy 30, the seed, 2 Samuel 7, 1 Chronicles 17, that's the Davidic covenant. And then the blessing is the new covenant. Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 36, and others. So
Yeah.
Whatever he learned at his seminary, I guess he didn't learn about these things.
Well, it was Tyndale University. Is it? And so it's like, well, because he went to Bible college, so it's like, did they really have a class on the new covenant and about dispensationalism? I don't, maybe, but I don't think so.
Well, yeah, and I'd have to look at their curriculum, but it's a
But
master's
PB, in this
divinity.
video, you said there is no class on it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but there are classes about dispensationalism, and there's classes about the covenants, but there's no class like there are. Well, actually, I talked to Kurt about this. There actually are very few classes on the new covenant. There's only one, which is Dispensational Theological Seminary, and that's the only place. Everyone else does not have a formal class on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, okay, so this is what we're gonna do. It's called Tyndale, Tyndale University, Canada, Masters of Divinity. TMS. Is that Master Seminary?
No,
it's right here. Tyndale University. All right. So here's his overview of it. You can have an MDiv majors in biblical studies, which I'm assuming that's what he got his in, or theological studies. So let's go ahead and go biblical studies. All right, so this is interesting. Wow. If this is the same program he did, number of courses 9. Okay. Duration 1 year. This is that's if you do a concentration, right? For their graduate diploma. All right. Then you got the Masters of Theological Studies, which is 18 courses, which is only 2 years, and it's completed as a concentration in biblical studies. And then you have a Master's of Divinity, and the number of courses is 27, and it takes 3 years. So what's 27 times 3?
81.
81. Okay. A typical Master's of Divinity is 90 hour credit hours. Okay. I was doing a Master's of Divinity before I switched to an MBS at THM, and I had 41 credits of a Master's of Divinity. But okay. So let's see if it will go into more issues about it. Okay, you got concentration options, biblical languages, Bible study, education, Christian history, spiritual formation, theological study. Let's just go to theological studies. Are they going to tell us anything about it? Okay, look what they mainly focus on. Our professors tailor and teach courses such as prayer and the people of God, theology of the human person, world religions, Christianity and Islam, evil and suffering, help you understand these issues relative today. So it sounds like his seminary is primarily apologetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes sense for all the stuff that he wrote, right? So,
Yeah. But philosophy for understanding theology, historical theology, contemporary theology, and it says that it produces a foundation for you to develop as a theologian in your own right. Okay. I wish they would show me, like, if I go to like, here, this is free advertisement, Schaefer Seminary, MBS. I'll do the MBS first. See, we tell you exactly what you're going to be taking, research methods, spiritual life, hermeneutics, Bible study methods, Greek 1, Christian framework 1, beginning Greek 2, Christian framework 2, prolegomena and bibliology, Jewish life of Christ, Old Testament survey stuff, intermediate Greek 1, beginning Greek Hebrew 1, Israelology. Then you can choose one out of these systematic theology categories. And then you have intertestamental history and gospels. You could choose one out of these. So this is like New Testament survey. And then you got intermediate Greek 2, beginning Hebrew 2, dispensationalism, free graces versus lordship salvation, and kingdom and covenants. So that MBS is 55 credit hours. Okay, credited. Now I have way more hours than that because I'm working on both programs at once. Because if you look at the difference between this is the THM. So it kind of starts out basically the same, except now all these survey classes are required. All of the theology classes are required. Church history is required. Apologetics, wisdom literature, theology proper and Trinitarianism, intermediate Greek 1, beginning Hebrew 1, anthropology, angelology, hamartology, Old Testament prophets, intermediate Greek 2, beginning Hebrew 2, church history 2, then year 3, advanced Greek 1, intermediate Hebrew 1, intertestamental history and gospels, Acts and Paul, Israelology, intermediate Hebrew 2, Old Testament introduction, advanced Greek 2, Hebrews and Revelation, Christology, sociology, free grace versus lordship, and then the 4th year, advanced Hebrew 1, New Testament introduction, evangelism of world missions. You can take that now. It's actually offered in the summer, and that is Dr. Bing's class. Jewish life of Christ, biblical preaching, pneumatology, sanctification, ecclesiology and eschatology, advanced Hebrew 2, biblical preaching. Then you got to write your thesis, and history of doctrine, kingdom of covenants, and dispensationalism. So that's 123 total hours. Bachelor's is 120 hours. So a THM is like this same amount as a bachelor's degree, except concentrated on, that upper level stuff. So I don't know what all classes he took, but some of this stuff sounds like it's like totally new to him, and it may be, and maybe we should cut him some slack.
Yeah. Although he does have an opinion and an eschatological preference, even though he's admitted, I haven't really studied it out that much, or I'm still studying it out, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, I because he said before he's preterist. Well, not like full preterist, but like a preterist interpretation of Matthew 24 and other places.
Mm-hmm.
So
the closest I got to a preterist interpretation is me trying to understand Haruzin's comments.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Why would it be a new covenant? Isn't that's the opposite of a new covenant? That's the old covenant.
Oh my.
Yeah,
I don't think
What?
he understood what he said. I mean, it's fine. He didn't understand what he said.
Let me get back to here.
I will make a new covenant with Israel for the sake of his own glory, and to keep the promises he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So the new covenant is about the promises he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why would it be a new covenant?
Yeah, he doesn't understand because the contrast between the new covenant is between the Mosaic covenant and the new covenant, not the Abrahamic covenant. The Abrahamic covenant is fulfilled, just as Galatians argues, because the Mosaic covenant doesn't annul it. So that's what he's not understanding.
Yeah.
And the differences between the covenants, the Abrahamic covenant is like a land grant. The Mosaic covenant is like a suzerain vassal treaty. So one is more permanent, one's permanent, unconditional, if you will, and the other one is temporary or conditional. But see, this is the thing. I know for a fact that he's been on my Academia EDU. So let me just show you something real quick. Because Academia EDU, unless they're lying to me, will tell me when Mike Sampat visits my page. Okay? And I just got the cheap version. But if I go to Academia EDU, and PB, you've seen this paper. Whoa. You're trying to sell it to me. So if you wanted to know what I understand as a dispensationalist, right? You got this Israelology video is pinned right here. My view on Galatians 3. That could help. But experiential sanctification, Galatians 3, that's that. Genesis, doctrine of sanctification, Romans, substantial participle, exploring the Abrahamic promise, the introduction to Old Testament eschatology. That would be a good place for Mike to start looking at. An introduction to theology proper, Deuteronomy 6 is even good. Let's see, where is it though?
Well, is it the one about Galatians 3?
Nope.
Okay.
There's another one. I'm looking for it. Did I skip it? Oh, right here. The basis for the dispensational premillennial faith. And I'm not going to read it, but I wrote this for Systematic Theology Hosting, who was at DTS, and this is at Southwestern. I wrote this in 2018, and it explains. Say right here it is. This paper would demonstrate that the dispensational premillennial faith is the best articulation thus far that describes the earthly, messianic, millennial kingdom as grounded in Scripture, theology, and history. So I talk about the three views of the millennium.
Yeah.
I talk about the subcategories of the millennium, such as historic, pre-mill, covenant, pre-mill, and talked about that. Hermeneutical considerations. Basically, I was kind of reductionistic, but I said it's either Catholic or Protestant interpretation, really. And then scriptural support for each one of the millennial views, the passages they use. An argument for dispensational premillennialism. And then you'll see I'm talking about the covenants. I talk about the land characteristic aspect. Talk about the seed characteristic aspect. The blessing characteristic aspect. Then the unconditional characteristic of the Abrahamic covenant. The relation of Genesis 12 and 15 in the Abrahamic covenant. The Messianic millennial kingdom in relation to the kingdom motif. And the ethnic composition of the Messianic millennial kingdom in Romans 11. And let's see what else. the timing of the Messianic millennial kingdom from Revelation 20, the historical basis, and the conclusion. So, I mean, if Mr. Mike Sampat, the academic who's a little bit rusty, really wanted to deal with my views of dispensationalism or your views, this would be a great primer for him. And it would be interesting to see what he would poke holes in about this, because I could write my paper better. And I've written other things in addition to this. You know, this is 2018. So I've grown in a lot of different areas. But anyway, I'd want people to know about that. Okay. Dispensationalism is confusing. Let's find out why it's confusing.
That's the opposite of a new covenant. That's the old covenant. Yeah.
Where's the passage, PB, that says not like the covenant? What passage is that?
31, Jeremiah 31:31.
So in the same context of the new covenant, it makes that contrast, that it's the contrast between the Mosaic covenant. That's what you're saying, right?
Yep.
But his mind is
in
the Abrahamic covenant.
Yeah, I don't think so. There's a distinction between the Abrahamic covenant and what flows out of it, which is the new covenant. The new covenant is to help fulfill the Abrahamic, and of course, the seed is Jesus Christ, and He's the one that's going to do all of that stuff. But still, it's made with Israel. That's the point.
Right.
I know what you're talking about. Still, it's all right. I don't know. I don't think we need to go there with those little kind of like legalistic ways of seeing it. I don't think that's the way to debunk this thing. But anyway, I don't understand. Why is he saying?
I don't know what Haruzim put there, but we'll just ignore it.
I think that God's going to make a new covenant with the land. Why does that? How does that make any sense?
God's going to make a new covenant with the land. That's not what that said.
At this point, I feel like he's trying not to understand it. That's not what I said at all. Not even close to what I said.
God is going to make a new covenant with the remnant of Israel during the tribulation. And then they're going to go into the land. Yes, howdy. Toronto is after PB.
Before, that's one of the main ones. Well, Daniel was in Babylon. But is it clear? Okay, because
What?
And see, that's the thing. You just built off the tension by saying that statement. Is it clear? Is it really as clear cut as you just presented it? So at this point, Toronto should appreciate that and say, yeah, good job, PB. You're actually not sweeping this under the rug. You're actually dealing with the tension and the difficulties.
Yeah, it's I don't know what Mike expects when he studies the New Covenant. If he wants to study the New Covenant. If he does, I recommend reading all the books you can about it. Like, if you're watching this, please read all the books you can about it. Because it's not as cut and dry as you might think it is, or as I might think it is. It's actually very complex, and the people that wrote the book spent years studying it. So,
Right.
Don't expect to come into one presentation and get all the info. This is an 11 presentation series, and this is just the introduction. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Progressive illumination.
the book of
Wait,
Hebrews,
what?
Isaiah 46, verse 13, this passage. And this is also the part of the kingdom we're promised to Israel. It's used in Isaiah 9, Isaiah 45, verse 17, Isaiah 46, verse 13, and Daniel chapter 2, verse 44. That's one of the main ones.
Kingdom promised to Israel. He will enable them to keep his commands by putting his law, remove the curse from their land, give them the power to obey. So he's saying that if you were just reading the Old Testament, you would understand that. That's how that's meant to be understood.
Well, what's it
What?
say?
What did he say? What did he say?
He says that
Wait. What?
he says he will enable. This is the quote he was reading. He will enable them to keep his commandments by putting his law in their hearts, remove the curse from the land, and give them power to obey. And so he's like, this guy is saying, or PB saying that the original audience would have understood all of that.
I mean, if you read, so, and this is the great part about this, Mike. I have a part 2 of this, and the part 2 actually goes into every single old New Covenant passage, and we even like distinguish them between directly New Covenant, indirectly New Covenant, and not New Covenant at all. And so you can see that, and so you can see where we derive all of this stuff and how we understand the New Covenant. It's not just 2 passages; it's like, I don't know, 20 or something at least.
So I'm going to hit this really superficial. Like Kingdom Come. I recommend that he reads this book. Janet, you could listen to Janet read to you if you want. She did the whole book, and now she's doing the Kingdom Come. But right now, you got right here. He calls it a name I disagree with, but the Palestinian Covenant, the covenant given, important distinctions, 7 features. Why is the covenant unconditional? Historic principle, the means of restoration, and a summary. So, and this is pretty common, but I think people should just hear it. Think about what that sentence just said. So, when all these blessings and curses I set before you and come upon you, and you take them to heart wherever the Lord God disperses you among the nations. So that means they're outside the land, right? They're dispersed.
Yeah.
And when you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him, when, it don't say if, it says when, obey him with all your heart and with all your soul, according to everything I command you today, then your Lord God will restore your fortune. That's the inheritance that's in the land, and have compassion on you, and gather you again from all the nations where I scatter you. He will bring you to the land. So you got land, right? You got land, obey, and heart, all right here, that belong to your fathers, and you will take possession of it. The Lord your God will circumcise your hearts, sanctification, and the hearts of your descendants, your seed, so that you may love him. So this is purpose or result. Love him with all your heart and with all your soul, and live. There's the Shema for the blessing idea. The Lord your God will put all these curses on your enemies who hate you and persecute. You will again obey the Lord and follow all his commands. The Lord will again delight in you and make you prosperous. So this is what we see. A careful analysis of the passage reveals 7 main features in God's timetable. Let me blow it up a little bit. The nation will be plucked off the land for its unfaithfulness. Deuteronomy 28. There will be a future repentance of Israel. Deuteronomy 28 and 30. Israel's Messiah will return. Deuteronomy 30. Israel will be restored to the land. 35. Israel will be converted as a nation. 34 and 8. Romans. Israel's enemies will be judged. Okay? And the nation would then receive her full blessing. Now, you know what's so cool about this? Now, I know this isn't the very first edition, but do you know that if I go to the Schofield Bible, the one that everybody hates, right?
Yep.
And I have an older one, and I have the Schofield 3, but this will work. Schofield Bible. Do you see it?
Yeah, at the bottom, Schofield Reference Bible.
Yeah. So let's go to Deuteronomy 30. The book that no one wants to study. Every one of these has the covenants and stuff at the bottom, and it's almost like a chain. throughout. All right. The Palestinian, wrong name, but look what you see. Look what you see.
Yeah. It's
same list, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It actually gives you more scriptures. So, Mike, if you're gonna criticize me for putting up 4 verses, I want you to go to the Schofield Reference Bible and see how many verses they put up to prove the future restoration of Israel. Because you know, if you want to go into all of that stuff,
right? And the reason Pentecost only did those few verses because he was talking about the ones in the immediate context of Deuteronomy 28 and 30. But he goes over how they link to the other place. And in addition to that, if you go to this section, at the very end, you got the kingdom program and prophetic books in light of the biblical covenants. And he goes through describing all the features, all the scriptures. I'm just skimming so you can see all the details. All scripture that you can study for yourself to evaluate if the descriptions are correct. This is about the kingdom, the tribulation, all of those things. Look at all of that. And yeah, there's some redundancy, but you get the point. And I can hook you up with these resources. That's not a problem.
But from what I've seen, though, Mike's response to this is like, hey, so if I got to understand, you got to read all these books and all these chapters and this and that. That's kind of how he's been arguing against this. Against.
You mean he's complaining about reading the Bible?
Okay.
Reading books about the Bible.
So Jamie Russell, he's actually in the comments and he's saying, do you agree that we aren't in the new covenant? In my view, no, we are not in the new covenant.
Jamie, why don't you watch and evaluate PB's series on the new covenant? How many videos you made? 11?
I've made 10 so far. The 11th one is the final coming up.
Okay. All right. So yeah, the answer to that, Taylor, is if you just read Schofield Bible or the book, the Kingdom Come, and you don't even got to read the words. Just write down the passages and go study the passages in context. You know, if it's that big issue, and like I said, Janet's already made videos, and so you can listen to them. So you ain't got to read all these books. Those books are entryways into that. You know what you didn't have a problem reading books when you were in school. You know, if it was a conspiracy book, you would read it.
I don't think that would be the way you would understand that, but okay.
Well, Daniel was in Babylon.
Why?
Why?
Why what, Taylor?
Why what?
Why isn't that the way you would read it? Give us some like.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't. He basically says, I don't think that's how to understand it, but okay. That's like weird flex. That's like weird flex, but okay.
Given
not adding nothing.
Yeah, give an alternate interpretation. You get please tell me something better that you could interpret these passages as. Please.
Yes.
Jump over too fast. They don't explain anything. It's just like he just gave you a list of scriptures, which he didn't read any of them.
I gave him 4 verses, by the way, but okay.
So he wants you to read him a story, a lullaby, you know, like Sean Griffin does in his debate openings. Spends all the time reading the passage and never makes an argument. The statements on your PowerPoint summarize the claims, and then you gave the scriptures of support for that. And so you don't have to read all. This is a presentation. How many presentations? I know he's done presentations with his degree. You can't read everything. You summarize everything, you know, and the information is there if people need it to research it.
Yeah, and by the way, those scriptures that I gave are like at best they are a cursory overview. Isaiah 9:6 and Daniel chapter 2 explicitly mentioned the everlasting kingdom, and Isaiah 45 and 46 mentioned the salvation of Israel. If you wanted to know what those verses were about, you can go into them for yourself. But that is what those verses are about.
Yeah. And that's the way to study, is that when you hear those verses cited, you take notes and you go on. You know, I mean, you study it out. You don't say, oh, well, he didn't read it. Well, you can read it yourself. You got a pause button, you know? And I think that's what he does a lot of times on his YouTube channel, is he reads scripture to people and they think that they're doing Bible study.
Yeah.
If they saw what me and you were doing last night in Discord, Bible study wise, they'd have a heart attack compared to what they do on his channel.
Well, I mean, that one was more about, it would be a heart attack in the sense like, oh my goodness, you're saying that the goats are saved, or something like that. You know, someone might say that.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, as far as his methodology and what he demonstrates, but to be fair, I mean, his Bible reading streams are just so dry, you know. I'd have to probably put them on like the fastest speed possible and review them. But maybe I'll do that in the future.
And now he's just gonna run through all this other stuff that he believes about it. Like, I don't know, it's confusing, man. It's
confusing,
so it's confusing. It's confusing because you don't know the passages that PB brought up. You don't have an Old Testament frame of references for these passages. You're just underdeveloped in that area. That's all it is.
He's also kind of he's not really engaged. He's reading his comments and stuff. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Backs up 5 seconds every 20 seconds.
Yeah, if you're texting your girlfriend and the professor is lecturing and you're like, what? What did you say? Man, you're confusing. I'm out of here.
Right. That's how it comes off.
I hear the thing. I will give him credit. Well, I'll give him an excuse because this came at around 3 hours and a half into his 3 hours into his live stream, and so he probably was already tired. This is the last thing he did. He was already engaging with trolls in the chat, so I'll give him that benefit of the doubt.
All right.
This is cut from a longer stream. This is cut from his open stream.
Okay, got you. That helps.
Yeah, that's true.
Explain anything properly.
Clear. Okay?
Yeah, I know.
Because
you don't explain anything properly clear. I understand you. I bet Janet understands you. And you know that may be the
because
test.
We're already indoctrinated.
Yeah, Janet's already too in deep, man. Yeah,
Janet's too deep. All right.
Yeah, I mean, she's already read 3 dispensational books, man. I mean, she's too far gone.
Okay. All right. Well, she might cook her roosin. Here we go.
I know.
the book of Hebrews is the only place that fleshes out the meaning of the new covenant, where the other passages kind of do it in passing. And it quotes from the book of Jeremiah and gives explanation to some of those quotes, but it still affirms it's for the house of Judah and the house of Israel. And so most
that's the thing. Like, come on, man. Nobody reading that.
Come on, man. Nobody reading that.
Nobody reading. Wait.
Would think that, you know?
Would think that. Nobody reading what?
Nobody reading
Hebrews?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, what do you mean nobody? I believe that. I read it and I heard it, because if you literally look at Hebrews chapter 8, it says, it just quotes Jeremiah 31. It doesn't give extra explanation. It just says, he's the minister. He is the mediator of a new covenant. This covenant was founded on better promises. How do we know that? Because Jeremiah 31 said it's better than the old covenant. And so it goes, but it doesn't really expound on it. It doesn't say, oh, by the way, the church is now Israel. Whoop-de-doo. It doesn't say that. It just says, this is the covenant I will make with them. There's no problem with that.
Yeah. I agree. There's more I could say, but I want to know what he's going to say.
What they think is that he's applying, because he's writing it to these Jews that they're Christians, though, they're Jewish Christians. So he's telling them about like he's not like I don't know people. I don't know.
Please stop saying I don't know if you know.
It's like I
don't
don't
even
know.
think
Yeah, I actually do know, but I actually don't know. It's just like which one is it?
It's not like I don't know people. I don't know why anybody
He's
would
writing
think that.
about the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Still, they think he's talking about the church. You know,
Why? Why would I think
They
that?
think
Where in Hebrews does it
Jewish
say-
Christians and Jewish Christians are still part of the church.
Yeah.
So this is his comments confusing. Is he thinking that you're saying that the church is mentioned in Jeremiah 31?
I mean, all I said was that the book of Hebrews still affirms that the new covenant is for the house of Israel. That's what I said. Now, of course,
Right.
again, like I go into the book of Hebrews, and this is the excellent thing. Part 8 of my series goes into the book of Hebrews in depth, Hebrews 7 to 10. So I recommend watching that video on how the book on how the introduction to the new covenant handles that epistle. But if you're just going to make statements of what I don't believe, well, I didn't say that. So yeah.
Okay.
anyway.
Most Bible students are going to break into multiple and varied views of the New Covenant, and they'll try to reconcile it with New Testament explicit mentions of those passages, like Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 36. And we have to briefly see some of these views so we can get a better understanding of the difficulty we're working with, at least in dispensational circles. Although if you're covenant,
I commend you on this. You know, you're laying out the tension, the difficulty. You're gonna introduce stuff in such a way. I mean, I think the books are well written, but you made the books better. You know, you make the books more understandable. I guarantee, and you know, think about it. Look how huge each one of the chapters is.
Yep.
I can't even. Logos allows you to export 100 pages at a time. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's with the footnotes and all of that. Each time that I have to send you a book, usually I'm having to send you like 3 PDFs. So that's 300 of Logos pages for each chapter. You know, so there's a lot there if you're including the footnotes. But you were able to organize and simplify this, and I think this will help anybody that's studying the book in the future. You know, so I think this is great, and I can't wait to do this with other books that I've talked to you about. You know,
theology that this doesn't really apply to, I would say. So, now I'm not ragging on Louis Schaeffer here at all, but some dispensationalists thought,
and see, he should appreciate this. You are about to be critical of certain dispensationalists. You know,
Yeah. And certain ones that I really like them. Louis Schaeffer. I highly recommend a lot of his books, but in his early days, I think he was incorrect in the 2 New Covenants view. That was just a way to accommodate like 2 Corinthians 3 and some other passages without, considering alternative options. And so I can critique my own camp.
Yeah. So he should appreciate that.
That there were actually 2 new.
And he should appreciate that you're using the same meme that he used against Dit. So
yeah. I was actually thinking about this meme. Okay, Prawn, if you're listening, I actually really like the Dit meme because number one, it's true. Okay, and number two, because I thought about that meme when I was making this slide. I'm like, you know what? Okay, that was actually a really good meme. I'm going to use that again in my presentation. Yeah. I mean, I use other memes in the other future presentations, but yeah.
New covenants. And so so one was for the house of Israel, one was for the church. He kind of articulates this in systematic theology. He says, upon entering their kingdom, he will make a new covenant with the nation, which will govern their life in the kingdom. A few pages later, he writes a reference at this point to the new covenant yet to be made with Israel. and not to the new covenant now in force with the church. And so you're like, oh, what does that mean? There's a new covenant in force with the church. How does that work out? And he clarifies even further in volume chapter 7, verses 90 to 99, which that's how far you got to dig in. He says, to suppose that these two covenants, so one for the church, one for the church, are the same is to assume that there's latitude of common interest between.
I'm neither NCT or CT right now, but I'm leaning towards NCT. But obviously, they need to adjust certain things because they're not free grace, right? But I'm leaning towards that. But their whole idea that it's like the law of Christ, I don't think that's what they mean by that in the Bible. But anyway, I'm kind of like, yeah, NCT, I guess.
Between God's purposes for Israel and his purpose for the church. Israel's covenant, however, is new because it replaces the Mosaic. But the church's covenant, I'm going to read that the Darby's Israel covenant, however, is new because it replaces the Mosaic. But the church's covenant is new because it introduces that which is mysterious and unrelated purpose. Let me check some stuff. Okay, good. Now, there's one covenant. So this is an alternate view. In response to that, there's one covenant, one people. This is covenant theology. So the equation kind of goes something like this. You have the church.
Look at you. You're even making this clear. And if I remember right, you even talk about NCT in here and new perspectives. If I remember right. Right, PB?
Okay. In this one, I forget. But I know definitely in my other New Covenant presentation, the one initial one that I did talk about NPP and New Covenant theology a little bit, and Bradley Green and some other people that promote that. And so I do think a lot of and so for NPP to really survive, it has to rely on covenant theology. It has to rely on assuming that the church has replaced Israel, or the church has replaced Israel. And so, in a lot of ways it is connected, like covenant theology and new perspectives, because that's like what NT right is. So I think it does maybe come up. I have to see.
Okay, if I remember right, it does. But okay, gather yourself together. He says he's a Black Hebrew Israelite. He said, "Do you debate us?" Yes, but you'll have to contact SFT, Standing for Truth YouTube channel, and tell them that you want to debate whether free grace theology is biblical. All right, and yeah, I've had discussions and debates with other Black Hebrew Israelites. You can look in my videos and shorts feeds about that. Not that serious, bye. Yeah, all right. If I'm not that serious, then go watch some other channels. I bet we cross paths again, and we'll find out how serious you are. Anyway.
You got a church building, see that? And you got Israel. You got the menorah. Don't judge me for that one. And you combine the two.
You never said you're a Black Hebrew Israelite? Okay, fine. You ain't black. Whatever you are, okay? You say you're an Israelite, but my view is no one would know who an Israelite is until the tribulation. So you claiming you an Israelite, I Israel right. But I'm not claiming to be an Israelite. That's fine. But see, this is the thing. Here's the issue. You already know it's already in the I'm scared. Okay. If I wasn't doing this stream on a particular issue, we'd find out. If I'm scared, why did I interact with Captain T? Why did I interact with Deacon Hakah and Hassad? And why did I go on Sons of Thunder and all of that stuff? Why am I on Clubhouse with all that stuff? But I'm scared. I've had almost 40 formal debates, but I'm scared. Okay? I think you're scared. Yeah, make a clip out of turn it out. Guess what? You make a clip out on me, and it will be a death by 1,000 clips. You'll be cut that much. I don't know if you're Sakari or what, but you'll think you got hit with a dagger. Because go see how many. Go see the Chris Morrison Captain T. Look how many shorts I have on that right there. And I don't care if they get many views. I just care about cutting and exposing the statements that are mentioned there. Okay? Now back to our regular programming.
And you get something called spiritual Israel, right? And so the church is the people of God living under the new covenant. This includes both Jews and Gentiles. And it doesn't matter who is addressed in Jeremiah 31. It doesn't matter if it says Israel. It doesn't matter if it says church. It doesn't matter if it says, your mom's birthday 7 years later. Okay, it's irrelevant because they address the same people. Israel is a people of God living under the old covenant. So that's the only difference. They're just under a different covenant. It includes Jews primarily, but included some Gentiles. So they think Gentiles can be Jews, which includes Ruth and Rahab. And it's primarily founded by unbelievers. So you have the remnant and their unbelievers in the nation. That's not true spiritual Israel. So these land promises are therefore spiritualized because clearly, if you're covenant theology, you can't take those land promises where they're going to grow corn and they're going to build houses. That can't be literal anymore.
Well, why does that have to be spiritualized? Why can't we just say it's part of the new heaven and the new earth?
Why would you? Why would you assume there is any mention of the new heaven and new earth?
And how do you know the new heaven and new earth ain't spiritual?
Yeah.
All right. Is that what they call spiritualizing it? Like, let's say God made a new heaven and a new earth, and then He gave the land to the Jews or whatever in the new heavens and the new earth or whatever. Who cares? Like, why is that spiritualized?
Why?
Because the land is the presence of God, according to Hiruzen. Go ahead, PB.
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, you want to put it in the new heaven, new earth, but why though? Like, why wouldn't you put it in the millennium? I mean, he's premillennial. Why would you want to take it out of the millennial kingdom and put it into even further?
Maybe he's doubting the millennium.
I mean, I talked to him a little bit about it. I don't know why he would, but yeah.
Israel Orthodox, you say free grace is only biblical if you quote mine. Quote mine from what? The Bible or from church history? Because I don't quote church history. And your statement wouldn't make any sense because if you say it's biblical, quote mine or whatever. And listen, you know what you'll find out? If you want to formally debate Israel Orthodox, is free grace theology biblical? You'll find out that your accusation of a quote mine means that you stepped into a landmine and you're going to get blown up because every time you make a claim or assertion, the chart's going to run through you as I run the passage through the chart. And if you don't know what the chart is, you better go do your homework because if you're going to come after the landmines, you better be a demolition man. All right, back to the thing.
Why does it have to be like who thinks it's gonna be literal? It's so weird. Like nobody thinks it's gonna be literal.
The people reading it thought they was literal. Were they wrong?
Gather yourselves together. My clip will be titled "Layman Seminary Rage and Run from Debate While He's Live." You mean Layman Seminary chose to stay on topic, addressing another YouTuber in a reaction video, and he didn't want to drop everything because you wanted attention?
Oh, you're failing.
Are you that attention deprived? I'm starting to think you're even an Israelite, quote Israelite. I'm starting to think you're one of these trolls that I've had other issues with, and you're just using a fake account. But anyway, let's move on. What'd you say, Taylor?
I said you're not doing a good job about staying on topic, as you say that you're staying on topic.
I know, but
let's just ignore them.
All right. I'm ignoring them.
He's gonna think, "Oh wow, that's what it really means." Like it's like ridiculous. Anyway,
anymore.
It's like
therefore, the new covenant, because it's mainly soteriological, it extends from the backward and to the future. So it's not installed at a certain point in time. It's sort of universal in a way. It's ultimately,
but it's not all covenant theologians feel this way about Israel. Some of them will say that there is a future for Israel, but that the land promises and stuff like that are going to, like the land promises are what do they say? They'll say no, not the land promises. I mean, sorry. What they'll say is that the promises.
Notice he said not the land promises.
Of like eternal life and those type of things. When it talks about the seed of Abraham and stuff, that's about the church. But that God may still have some kind of plan for the physical Jews. That's what some covenant theologians talk about. That like these guys call it 1689 Federalists or something like that.
And so therefore there is
Federal vision. That's what he's talking about.
no future for the nation of Israel other than individual Jews joining the church. And now national Israel, which is most composed of unbelievers, well, the picture of the church, which is, you know, just new, big, new, better Israel, spiritual Israel. Now there's another view, which is one covenant but two people. Question mark. So in this view, this is modern dispensation. These are most dispensationalists. They say the church is the metaphorical body of Christ that began in Acts 2. I agree with that, and ends at the rapture. And so most dispensation say it's pre-tribulation, but you don't have to believe that. This includes both Jews and Gentiles that have been baptized by the Holy Spirit. So 1 Corinthians 12:13, we've been all baptized by one Spirit into one body. That body is the body of the church, and therefore it partakes of the spiritual blessings of the new covenant. Specifically forgiveness of sins, regeneration, we're going to get into that, and indwelling, but the physical land promises are for Israel only. Now, how exactly this plays out, many commentators disagree. Some will say it's a picture, but you still get the forgiveness of sins. Some will say that the law written on your heart is something you get. Some say it's not what you get. Some say regeneration is included. Some say it's not included. It's very, very prone to being selective. And so in contrast, you still have Israel being the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The nation will always exist, but they've been temporarily set aside for God's purposes. And they'll be blessed by God in the future kingdom after the tribulation period, right? When they call upon the name of the Lord. And these blessings are in the new covenant that the church has already experienced, but Israel finally partaken. So therefore, things like national forgiveness of sins, national regeneration, national indwelling, all these things, they're with the church now, but they'll be in the future with Israel. And all of these things were ratified by Christ's blood when he died. And so we'll get into the ratification distinction there.
Wait.
When he died.
So, okay, Israel is the literal descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The nation will always exist, but they have been temporarily set aside for God's purpose. We blessed by God in the future kingdom after the tribulation period. Okay, these blessings are in the new covenant that the church has already experienced, but Israel will finally partake in. Oh, I see. The new covenant is with the child. Yeah, okay, fine.
He's not giving an argument.
Well, what does he agree? I mean, if you agree, you know, like what? So then, where's the disagreement with dispensationalists for the most part? You know, it's like I guess he's just hesitant. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if he's saying, "Okay, I see what you're saying," or "Okay, I see," like, "Okay, I agree with that." I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And so we'll get into the ratification distinction there. Now that seems to make sense, right? I mean, right? You got the same things, same covenant. It's new covenant, and covenants talked about in the church. See that, or does it? So then we also got.
I like this. I like the tension that you're bringing. Like it's like, let me tell you about this simple thing, and let me show you why it's actually more complicated, and let me still explain this complicated concept in a way that's pretty simple. But then let me take it deeper and show you it's more complicated, you know? So yeah, that's good.
Kurt's view. I say this is Darby and dispensationalism. It's not necessarily Darby was one of the main proponents of it, but you don't have to agree with everything he said. And it's not.
No, that's the thing. That's what I'd like to know about it too. Like, what about all the Jews that died in the meantime? Are they?
What about all the Jews that died? If they believe the gospel, where they go?
They go to the church and they go to heaven.
Right. They're part of the church. There's your answer.
Hey, are they just forgotten, or what's the one?
But here's the thing, though. So, Mike, here's your answer. Any unbelieving Jews that died went to hell, but the nation itself will survive until the end of the tribulation, and then they will nationally repent. So, yes, I mean, they are chosen again on a corporate level, but individual Jews must be saved by faith. And so it's not like some special thing. We're not John Hagee over here. You know, there's no two covenants, two ways of salvation. It's just the Romans 11:29, the gifts and callings of God are without repentance.
Yep.
What's going on with them? Like all the Jews, there's so many. They're also the seed of Abraham. They're also all that stuff, right? So what's that all about? You know. It's ridiculous.
So Larry Pettigrew.
So what about all the Jews? They're also of the seed of Abraham. How is that a refutation?
Well, because he's assuming it's soteriological.
Oh.
Being of the seed of Abraham is not soteriological; it's sociological. It's for blessings, and yeah, you can be in the land but not saved. You can be saved but not in the land. They're not. They're not like. They're not the same thing.
Right.
You know?
And so, because he's got a sociological degree, what I would say, I'm going to use some technical language. It's been a while since I've used it. Is pattern maintenance is what we're talking about. If I remember right, that's the term. So, whenever you have groups form a culture. All right. Folkways, moreways, rituals, laws, different things that are beliefs, norms, values, these different things that make up a culture. Okay. Well, as groups become more organized and social structures develop, then you have to have a way to maintain certain boundaries, to keep certain things in and leave certain things out, right? So that leads to distinctiveness, and institutions arise to meet certain social needs and to address social problems that occur. And so what happens is things move from a homogeneous view of things and types and forms of society to a more heterogeneous and diversified thing. And so as a result of all that, what that essentially allows us to see is why in God's program, as God has been going through human history, there things have moved in that sort of types and form of society pattern, and they become distinct on certain issues, and therefore dispensationalism recognizes those distinctions, and we're seeking to maintain those boundaries, those patterns, because that is how God intends for that organization, if you will, to function, you know. And when it's not functioning properly, you have conflicts, you have strain, and other things like that. That's just me dipping in my sociology bag. He'll get it. Yeah, y'all probably got a lot of that, but anyway, moving on.
Group, who's not a dispensationalist, by the way, he acknowledges that the biggest hurdle in his interpretation of the new covenant is that those promises are given to Israel only in every single text where it's mentioned, and leaves Gentiles from the outside looking in. So how does that work out in his system? I don't know. The Jews in the Gospels rejected the kingdom offer, and thus the new covenant inauguration, but Christ did ratify, which, by the way,
and see, the thing is Pettigrew is brought up in so much dispensational material. I always thought he was a dispensationalist. So this was, I think that was my first response whenever I heard you teach on this originally. It's like, I didn't know Pettigrew wasn't a dispensationalist. And I still haven't researched that, but it's something that's on my radar.
Yeah.
Ratification means to sign the contract of something. It means that you've made all the necessary preparations for it. And therefore, it has the ability to be put in force. But we're going to get into that. And so he did that when he died on the cross. John Master, for instance, who is a Darby and dispensationalist, he believes that the church is united to the mediator of the new covenant. But other than that, the new covenant awaits actualization, which is inauguration. And inauguration and actualization are the same thing. We'll try to distinguish them. With the house of Israel and the house of Judah.
Layman, I gotta go do something right now, but
Okay.
hopefully you'll do a good job reviewing the rest of the video. Mike, again, I recommend, if you have the time, watch the series. I even have it re-uploaded on my channel, and I'm gonna eventually finish all the re-uploads. You know, and just if by the end of it you still think that I'm wrong about it, then fine. Please make a refutation of it, like an actual, like, say something about it rather than just dismiss it, hand wave it away. Hopefully you'll respect that. So yeah, talk to you later, guys, and you know, good luck.
Thank you.
See you, PB.
All right, Taylor, what is your initial thoughts so far?
I don't feel like he's really paying attention.
Yeah.
He's not able to articulate back the things that PB had just said. Which
Mhm.
to his credit, like we said, it's it's part of a long stream, blah blah blah. But that's how I feel. So I would appreciate, like PB said, maybe a dedicated thing where it's like, okay, no comments, you're not reading. This is okay. We're going to sit down, actually go into it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But from
So
what
he-
I've seen from him, it's mostly this stuff. When he engages with dispensationalism, it's this kind of level.
Mhm.
It's not pulling a text, things like that. From what I've seen, I've watched only a couple videos where he puts dispensationalism in the title.
Yeah. So he's dazed, and that's why he thinks dispensationalism is confusing. Yeah.
It says it's a new covenant, issues and
So
dispensations.
wait. So they rejected the Jews of the Gospels rejected the kingdom offer, right? Then what do they have to be? So why would they, if they rejected it? Why do they have to get another?
Because of the promise.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, is that an individual or group could be disinherited from receiving the promise. But God guarantees that a future generation, a future seed, will accept the kingdom offer. So it's prophecy.
And I think he believes that, the latter part, and how I think he understands Romans that way.
Mhm.
So anyway.
Anyway, this thing is weird.
So others, like Bruce Ware, who is a dispensationalist, but he's more modern, he takes an already not yet framework to allow the blessing of the new covenant to be experienced by the church, despite the kingdom not being present. So I would argue that the church is not the kingdom at all in any sense of the word. We're sons of the kingdom, we're not the kingdom itself. And so therefore, in his view, you could have the blessings of the covenant without the kingdom. At least that's how he thinks about it. So now, okay, it seems like we're working toward a solution, okay? Because there seems to be some sort of disagreement in our camp. So problem one, the challenge, is hermeneutics. Most non-dispensational interpreters take a New Testament backward theology, and then they try to rewrite the Old Testament with the New. Now, what's the solution for us? You recognize the strengths inherent with a grammatical, historical approach that does not assume that the New Testament writers change any of the meaning of the Old Testament's text. That's what I mentioned before, and that's of critical importance, because once you
So they don't change the meaning of any Old Testament text. What about like
All right, let's see how he does here.
Hosea 11:1? The one,
Hosea 11:1, out of Egypt I called my son. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to say Matthew changes the meaning of the Old Testament text. There's a difference between saying that a dispensationalist doesn't change the meaning versus Matthew that is adding additional meaning to it. He's not changing the meaning. This deals with the concept of intertextuality. And so basically the way this works, it's like a Bone Thugs and Harmony song. You know how Bone Thugs and Harmony always cite, yeah. Well, what they do is in their songs, they always refer back to their previous songs. So let me think of one. There's one, they got this song called No Surrender. And then in this other song, I think it's on East 1999, they're like, they say, me no surrender, can I get away your bonus being no pretender. Anyway, they do that, and it's like, okay, you made a reference, that might be an Art of War, but regardless, the phrase no surrender reminds you that. They did the same thing with It's an Everyday Thing. They've done it on Crossroads. They've done it in all of their songs. They do it. And so what it does, I mean, Snoop did it on Little Ghetto Boy. He said, waked up, jumped out my bed. I'm in a 2-man cell with my homie Little Half Dead. Murder was a case that they gave me. And so what's ironic is I actually heard the song Murder Was a Case by Snoop, which usually if I make a statement saying murder was a case that they gave me, people think it's that song. But no, I'm referring back to what he said in the song Little Ghetto Boy. So he took a little sliver of a saying and turned it into a whole theme of a song. And so what happens with the Old Testament is you have out of Egypt, I called my son. This is from Exodus, where he says, if you do not let my son go, I will kill your son. That's what God told Pharaoh. And so that's the idea there. Then you get to Hosea and what was going on in that time. And so it takes on that idea of reminding people that the nation of Israel was brought out of Egypt. Then Matthew draws a parallel because when Jesus Christ had to flee to Egypt as a baby, he after whenever Herod was dead, that's when he came from Egypt. So it's just making a point of similarity there. And if we were going into more technicality for this, there's different things that you can do with the use of the Old Testament and the New, but you're not changing the meaning because the meaning is consistent. In Exodus, it was talking about the idea of the son being national Israel versus Pharaoh's sons, the death of the firstborn, and the Exodus event. Hosea makes a comparison of the whole nation being delivered, and then Jesus Christ, who is a son of the national son, is brought from Egypt after his death. So, and we could bring up Chow, Hermeneutics of the Biblical Writers, and we could go in more detail with that. We could bring up Radelnik, we could bring up Fruitenbaum and all of this stuff. It's a common hermeneutical thing. I think in my How to Study the Bible Like a Seminary Professor, we went through some of that stuff. So his claim that dispensations are changing the meaning is wrong. And number two, even Matthew's not changing the meaning. But even if, let's say, Matthew is changing the meaning from his concept, he's an apostle, he's inspired writers. And so that doesn't justify us doing it because they do it. That's another angle. Another thing to say is if you want to make a claim that dispensationalists are changing meaning, then what you would have to admit is that dispensationalists change meaning less than anybody else. Everybody else is just out of total control. There's no interpreter controls on their system. So those are my initial thoughts to that.
Matthew says, like, out of Egypt I've called my son, but he's taking it from Hosea, and Hosea is obviously talking about the nation of Israel. Matthew's applying it to Jesus.
Is Jesus an Israelite?
Yeah.
Taylor, you there?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you see the word he used? Applying. Interpretation and application are not the same thing. Meaning and the referent are not the same thing. So the meaning is deliverance in both the Hosea and in the Matthew passage, and the referent is what is different. But one is a subset of the other. This is just like in Isaiah. You have the nation being the servant of God, and then you have the suffering servant, Jesus, as a subset. Same thing with the idea of the seed. You have the big seed, and then you have the perfect representative. And that's why it's like a help wanted sign. Who's going to be the one that crushes the serpent's head? Well, everyone has the responsibility of doing that, but only one who's sinless and who's God will ultimately fulfill that. That's not changing the meaning. The meaning is stable.
So that's one example. There's many others. There's many examples of this. Actually, the New Testament it clearly actually demands that you read the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament. There's no way you could not, There's no way to understand the book unless you do that. And they do it too, but they're not talking about it right now. For example, they try to separate the people who believe from the people who don't believe. The Jews who believe are separate in their mind from the Jews who don't believe.
Okay, so watch this. In one of my debates, I made a chart that I showed Matt first. So let me go ahead and pull that up. It's still rusty. Let's see, where did I put it? Did I put it in here? Yeah, right here. Look at this. So in this one, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got the green that represents Israel. Oh no, I'm sorry, the seed of Abraham. The green represents the seed of Abraham, and it's divided into two parts: the unbelieving seed of Abraham and the believing seed of Abraham. Okay. Now, I actually believe that this is actually works better as the faithful and the unfaithful, and that it's not about salvation. But most people assume that it's about belief and unbelief. So, an example of the unbelieving sons of Abraham that other people would bring up are Ishmael and Esau. They're eliminated from being the ones that receive the covenant blessing. Okay, they're not the theocratic administrators, but Isaac and Jacob are. So then you have the blue circle, which represents Israel. So the seed of Abraham includes others besides just Israel. It includes Abraham's other children that he had, with Keturah and all of that. But it's divided up. Same thing. One half is believing Israel, and the other half is unbelieving Israel. Okay. But then you have this circle in the middle, and that represents Christ. Christ is a believing Israelite. I mean, he don't need salvation, but he's the seed. So does this visually help you see, and hopefully help others see, that when people try to dismiss and say, oh, well, the seed or Abraham's blessing and Israel don't get a promise, do you see where they're going wrong, Taylor?
Yeah, I didn't actually understand what Mike's initial point was, though, when he was saying that we separate it. What is he getting at?
Well, what he's trying to do is he's trying to say that we separate the believing Israelites from the unbelieving Israelites. I think what he's trying to say is we would say the believing Israelites are part of the church now, and the unbelieving Israelites are not part of the church. I think that's where he's going. But that's a good question, and we need to keep listening.
Honestly, some of them will admit, and they'll admit but that doesn't make any sense, because why should they be separate? Because they're trying to say that the original promise from Abraham is unconditional. Anyway.
Well,
So
right, the
you see
promise
what
is
he's saying?
unconditional, but not to receive the blessings.
Right. Yes. You had to
And
be.
that's why they need a new covenant.
Right. The Abrahamic covenant is given to Abraham's seed, but you had to be circumcised. There was things like that, even during that time. But yeah, you're right. You have to be obedient to receive the blessing, and that implies you have to be a believer.
You acknowledge that. I think you have to take, you have to sort of seriously consider a lot of the interpretations you previously held, because they probably come from covenant theology. Number two is audience relevancy. The new covenant is promised to a particular nation, and that nation has a particular problem. They've been separated from their land, and they need to obey God to stay in the land. That's in the passages themselves. So what's the solution to this? Well, you have to see if there's any possibilities in the text or other texts, New Testament or Old Testament.
So the other thing is, if Jeremiah 31 is talking about the new heavens and the new earth,
so why does he think Jeremiah 31 is talking about the new heavens and new earth? Does Jeremiah 31 mention the new heavens and new earth anywhere?
I need to check.
Only if the heavens above can be measured. Okay, so here's a Logos sermon saying new is better by somebody. And Let me type in new heaven. Okay. So this guy says, this is why Paul says suffering of this present age isn't worth comparing to the glory that's to be revealed. God's people are on the way to redemption. They won't suffer long. The new heaven and new earth are coming. That's all he says there. So I don't know why he's jumping to the new heavens and new earth in that passage. Did anything come up for you about the new heavens and new
No.
earth in Jeremiah? Okay. So it sounds like he's just conflating the new heavens and new earth in the kingdom, even though supposedly he's premillennial. I don't know. Let me share my screen again.
And we can understand why we would be able to obey his statutes and his laws and all that, right? You know? Like, anyway, whatever.
And allow for Gentiles to participate.
Let me make sure I didn't miss that. We could
We would be able
understand why.
to obey his statutes and his laws and all that, right? You know? Like, anyway, whatever.
What is he saying, Taylor?
I think you have to go back a little farther before he started that.
Or Old Testament.
You know,
And
like, so the other thing is, if Jeremiah 31 is talking about the new heavens and the new earth, then we can understand why we would be able to obey his statutes and his laws and all that, right? You know? Like,
I think what's happening is he understands new heaven and new earth to mean when we get a glorified body that has no sin nature.
Okay.
So he thinks, it sounds like he's saying only resurrected people are going to fully, perfectly obey. And this is something we ran into. I think even SFT might have held this view that the kingdom will be of resurrected people. There won't be people without glorified bodies or resurrected bodies.
anyway, whatever.
and allow for Gentiles to participate in these blessings if they can participate in them at all. And if they can't, well, we might have to rethink our ideas about it. And number three, you have to consider the timing. I mean, it says when it's going to be given. It's after those days, in the latter days. So we have an eschatological framework here, and it's when they come back to the land and they experience spiritual renewal. But we have to recognize this can't be fulfilled after the Babylonian exile, because only 2 tribes came back, primarily. You have a little bit of the others, whereas the rest were scattered.
This is a good point, right? You can't say all of Israel has come back because, and historically, because like he's saying, only 2 tribes came back after the exile.
They became Samaritans. And therefore, there wasn't also spiritual renewal there. They didn't have the temple promise in Ezekiel 40 to 48. There's so many problems when you take that view. That
The temple in Ezekiel 48, it's like a lot of people think that's a temple in heaven or something, or some kind of.
You see what he's doing?
Heaven.
It's on earth. He's conflating and collapsing the first phase of the kingdom and the second phase, the millennium and a new heavens, new earth.
Of like, I mean, I don't know why he's bringing up that. There's a temple like prophecy or something like a vision. Ezekiel.
He don't know why we're bringing up the temple, because if there's a literal temple on earth, who's the temple given to? Israel.
Yeah, there's going to be sacrifices reinstated, things like that. It'll be in service. There'll be
Right.
service in the temple, in the kingdom.
So the return of the temple, the return of the king, and the return of a new covenant to replace the Mosaic covenant, as well as the enablement, all basically says the theocracy has returned, and it's better than ever.
But the
And
thing
Satan
is, like,
Satan
when we
is
say things
bound.
like this, it's like he just thinks we're creating lore. Like we're just making it up. And it's like
Well,
if you don't read all the scriptures in the Old Testament that talk about it in your stream, then you're making it up.
Yeah, but his audience has got to be smarter than that. They hopefully, if they see this video, they can understand. Look, this is a presentation. In a presentation, you have so much time to give, and you can't read every scripture, just like a debate opening or whatever. But the real issue that I want his audience to think about is he giving arguments against the passages brought up, or is he just
No, all
saying
he's
it's
saying is saying
confusing?
some people, I don't know, some people think this, and it's not even what we believe about the scriptures.
Right.
So
It doesn't seem like he's trying very hard to understand us. My wife messaged on the phone. Let me check.
and that's why I
on her.
suggest, you know, I think it's easier to just read, like read text, read a book, read Andy Wood's, read Pentecost. They have the chapters, it's clearly laid out.
Okay, Janet's oh my gosh. So her house is being eaten up by termites in certain areas, and so she's working on all that. She hired one guy to do it, and the guy didn't do the job, so it looks like she's going after termites right now. I don't even know if she has everything she needs, but maybe she just pretend they're Sam Shamoon and she'll be all right.
He has this vision of a temple in chapter towards the end of the book, and so he's saying that because that hasn't been fulfilled, that means that Jeremiah 31 has not been fulfilled. Anyway, I don't even care about that. I'm just saying.
Jeremiah is a prophet of Babylon. Ezekiel is a prophet in Babylon. They're both talking about similar things. Jeremiah talks about other things that relate to the theocracy. So it's like he's saying, anyways, I don't care about that. Well, it's coming to your mind for a reason. And I think that his conspiracy theories affect what he believes about Israel, which causes him to be dazed and confused when he hears arguments like this.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a form of satanic blindness almost, and I'm just praying it's lifted.
Jeremiah 31 be talking about something else, like the future, but it's also like not about the Jews themselves. Like it's
Have the
about,
temple promised in Ezekiel.
Jeremiah 31 is
Who is it
not
about?
about the Jews. This is the new covenant that I make with the house of Israel and Judah, but it's not about the Jews.
40 to 48. There's so many problems when you take that view that I don't think it's tenable. So what's the solution for this? Well, you have to understand the new covenant in light of your own eschatology, your overarching one generally, and you have to approach it. If there's any inauguration type language that progressive dispensationalists use a lot, if it's possible. If it's not possible, again, you have to disregard the view. Now,
wait. So look, his solutions are this. His solutions was recognize the strengths inherent with the grammatical historical approach. It does not assume the NT writers change the meaning of OT text. But there are numerous passages where it's obvious that they've changed the meaning. All right.
So here's the problem. If you say that the meaning changed, then you're saying that God's word can be tampered with. Meaning is stable throughout. So the arguments that the hermeneutic books make is this, and I'll update it for our current president. When the current president says that he's going to levy a 25% tariff on all these countries or whatever, the meaning of that statement is that he's going to do that, right?
Right.
So forever, for all time, that statement is locked in time. It will never change. It is true that on that date, in that location, he said that statement. Now, and then he comes back, we see an additional report, and it says that the president has frozen his view of tariffs or whatever for 90 days. I'm not good at politics, so forgive my language. But he's increased for China 125%. Okay? So what that means is that you have two different news updates. The meaning of the first news update is in that news update. It never changes. The meaning in the second update is in the second update. That never changes. Now, what we can do is we can compare what was said there and what was said here in the update, and you can understand things in the sense of implications and applications. So the implication is this. This is not interpretation, but this is implication. The implication is that the reason that the president stalled, if you will, or paused the 25% tariffs is because he wants to be intimately involved in the process. Okay? That's an implication. Now, to be fair, I did learn about that implication from another news source, but I'm just pretending like I'm putting it together for this illustration. So what that allows for is there's no contradiction. The meaning is the same. He meant one thing at another time. Situations came up where things changed so that he halted different things. Now, the issue is when you're talking about the Bible, people are like, well, this is God's word. It doesn't change. The meaning never changes. But there are certain things that God does that have conditionality in it, and other things that he does that don't have conditionality in it. That's why we make a distinction between unconditional covenants and conditional covenants. I don't like that language. It's better to use permanent versus temporary, or non-dependent versus dependent. But regardless of that, the point is that the meaning is in the text. The meaning is in whatever unit of analysis you have, and it never changes. It remains stable. So New Testament writers, what they're doing is they're saying a statement because their audience knows the Old Testament. And so, and Eminem does this, and different rappers, like I was mentioning about with Bone and Snoop, they'll make a statement knowing that the audience that are their fans are going to remember that that's a callback to a previous song or reference to something like that. And they're like, okay, this is Marshall Mathers LP2, but this is alluding to LP1, or this is the death of Slim Shady, alluding to the Slim Shady LP, or something like that. And so it's because the audience knows that information that the New Testament writer can take the argument to the next level. So let me show you an example. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? John 1:1, what does it tell you, Taylor?
What's that?
John 1:1. What does John
in the
1:1
beginning
tell
was the
you?
Word, and
So
and the Word
it's
was
it's playing on the in the beginning, right?
right.
So Genesis 1:1 says God created the heavens and the earth. John goes in more detail about that and introduces the word, the logos, as the intermediate agent of creation. What does 1 John 1:1 do?
Talks about that which was from the beginning.
Right. And from the beginning there is talking about from the beginning of Jesus' ministry when he's with the apostles. But
Right.
he chose that language to remind you of what he said in the Gospel of John, which, like I said, is even a callback to Genesis 1. That's what I'm talking about. The audience knows Genesis 1. They know the Gospel of John, and so they understand what he's doing with what he's saying. So the meaning's not changing. It's just that the author is playing off of their prior understanding from previous messages. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Even Paul does this too. But just thinking about Matthew, there's the thing about Hosea 11:1. There's the thing about Jeremiah when he talks about how Rachel
weeping for her sons. In context, what that was talking about was in the passage. Hello? Okay. And my screen went black for a second. In the context, Rachel weeping for her sons was talking about how the sons were going off to war and they were being victims or taken away captivity or whatever. And it said Rachel, but it wasn't Rachel, it was the mothers of Israel. But it was similar to Rachel, because Rachel and Jacob and Rachel weeping, that idea there. And then relating that to the death, the massacre of the infants at Jesus's birth. So in all examples, you have Rachel, who's married to Jacob. Jacob's name is Israel. So you might as well say Israel's weeping. And then in the Jeremiah passage, you have the women from Israel weeping. And then in Matthew, you have the people of Bethlehem that are in the nation of Israel weeping. The meaning stays the same. The reference changes, but the meaning stays the same.
Rachel is weeping for her children, right? There's the thing about even the thing about John the Baptist, like
he's going to talk about coming in the spirit of Elijah and the one that will prepare the way for the Lord and being a refiner's fire or whatever.
About John the Baptist, even that, because Jesus will go on to say that Elijah will indeed still, shall indeed still.
Yeah, because the reason being there's two comings. There's the first coming, right? And if Israel would have accepted him, then John the Baptist's ministry would have been fulfilled. Okay? In that sense. But because they rejected Christ, that means that Christ is going to come back again, which means that there has to be somebody else that prepares the way for the Lord. And that's why in the book of Revelation, you have the two witnesses that evangelized 144,000 and so on.
Still come, So Jesus even admits that although Matthew does, or though even Jesus talks about how John is Elijah, there's still another Elijah to come. It's not as if that was done there. There's other prophecies.
So the meaning stays the same, but the reference changes. The meaning is someone is going to prepare the way for the Lord. That was John the Baptist for the first coming. The tribulation is someone or someone's is going to prepare the way for the Lord in the tribulation. So the meaning stays the same. The reference change.
Where he's trying to say the meaning changes. That's
the whole thing. It's not the meaning changing.
That's it. There's plenty of things like that in the New Testament where they clearly are changing the meaning of Old Testament text. Solution 2: see if there are any possibilities in the text or others that allow for Gentiles or otherwise to participate in these blessings, if at all. Yeah, okay. I think there are many. Understand the new covenant in light of one's overarching eschatology. An approach to inauguration language is possible. Anyway,
you have to disregard the view.
Does he understand what inauguration language means? So, inauguration language is like something has began, but it hasn't been consummated yet. And so that's why you have people that are saying, well, the kingdom's already in place, but not yet as it's going to be. And all of that. I don't go that route, not about the kingdom.
Now, New Covenant, New Testament, are they exactly the same? How does that work out? Right?
Yeah, Howdy went through Elliot Johnson's book where it's talking about the stableness of meaning. And so he's making good comments under the chat. Haven't evaluated them all, but I think he's in agreement.
The New Covenant, and by the way, when I say Old Testament, I don't mean the Old Covenant. There's like 4 or 5 Old covenants in the Old Testament. When I mean Old Testament, I mean the scriptures from Genesis to Malachi before Jesus came on the scene. When I mean New Testament, I just mean Matthew to Revelation. Nothing particularly significant there. The New Covenant does not play a massive role in the New Testament, contrary to people's preconceived notion. It's only mentioned by Christ once, repeated 3 times in Matthew 26, Mark 14, and Luke 22.
I mean, Toronto's got us give it to PB. There's information that Toronto has probably never heard before. There's things I haven't even heard before, and I've skimmed the book, a long time ago. But things are sticking that didn't stick before.
Jesus' blood, I'm not denying this. It is necessary for the New Covenant. But does that necessarily mean it's in operation right now? And of course, you have 1 Corinthians 11:25 that just references the gospel accounts, doesn't make any statement about it. And then Romans 11:27, which is talking about the restoration of Israel, it actually mentions it's a future promise. So if you're a dispensationalist, which means that this scripture can't be fulfilled right now. And it goes back to Isaiah 59. We're going to get into that in future installments.
Romans 11:27. There's other ways to read that. Isaiah 59:21, still future. Okay.
Now, I would say second.
There's other ways to read it, but he doesn't give them.
I mean, of course, there's other ways to read it. Of course.
There's a wrong way. Yeah.
It's all right.
Corinthians 3:6 says Paul is a minister of the New Covenant, but he doesn't really expound on what that means. And the context is, number one, experiential. Number two, it's talking to the Corinthian church about it validating its ministry. And so, therefore, the only book we have left that could actually develop.
No, yeah. Well, he's talking about the church in that time. He's saying that he's a minister of the New Covenant in that time. This is the thing. They have to stretch that scripture's like quite clear.
But you see what he's saying? He's saying that the New Covenant's already in play during the church. Now, I'm fine with that view, but that's not PB's view, and that's not the book's view. But that doesn't do away with dispensationalism. You can hold the view that the New Covenant is in operation now, but it will be ultimately fulfilled when Israel in the kingdom.
Clearly says that Paul's the minister of the New Covenant. Well, if he's the minister of it, that means it's in effect, But they're going to try to say, "Oh, that doesn't mean that." Why?
I don't know if Toronto knows that I don't hold to single covenant Israel only right now.
Why would he be the minister of something that's not in effect?
I started PB here because I think he was already leaning this way. And there's a lot of different views. It's easier for him to read one book that are all arguing for the same thing, but they're each contributing something else, versus him starting with the other New Covenant book that gives different views of the New Covenant. And it was just easier for him to internalize one main view, single covenant Israel only. And the book interacts with the other views as you're going.
Scriptures too, man. Anyway.
The New Covenant is the book of Hebrews, right? So we got to get into that. Now, I'm going to give you Gary Gilley's interpretation. I'm not saying it's necessarily mine, although I could adopt it in the future. But this is basically what he argues. He says the author of Hebrews is warning his readers about going back to Jewish practices, things like the Levitical system, the temple, the priest, for their sanctification, not their salvation. And so doing so would harm their growth and have them return to the inferiority of the law. The law doesn't just mean moral commandments; it also means that the rituals and stuff.
Yeah, that's another thing.
So,
yeah. Is this the Jews? Like the Jews aren't as many as the sands of the sea.
You see what happened there? He's confusing how much when he's hearing Jews. What's in his mind, Taylor? What's in his mind when he hears the word Jews?
The church.
Yeah, that's possible, but I think he's also thinking about the people that live in Israel, or that went through the Holocaust. Okay, so so what he's saying right there is, wait a minute, those people are not as many as the stars of the sand of the seashore. There were 6 million at that time. I think there's more now, but it's not the same as the sands of the sea. It's not the same as the stars in the sky. So that means that it can't be Israel. That's his argument. But like I showed you on the chart, you had the big green circle, which is the seed of Abraham. And then within the seed of Abraham, you have the blue circle, I think it was, that represents Israel. So, and the Jews within that. So he's conflating the Jews with the seed of Abraham, but one is a subset of the other. So that's where part of the problem is coming in.
Okay, I got to go in a couple minutes.
Obviously,
Just a heads up.
Okay, since you're fixing to go, just go ahead and freestyle. Talk to me about your impression, what you think, what's on your mind, and all of that, and then I can continue on after you go.
Yeah, I like Mike. I'm glad that he's reviewing PB's thing right here. I am glad. I'm glad we have I'm glad we have someone that's interacting with the dispensationalism that's not dispensationalist. I think we need that in free grace, right? My only thing, I got triggered today because, Mike did a video in response to Grace and Max. He's another channel, Free Grace Dispensationalists, right? They kind of have some beef going back and forth. That's okay. But in that video in particular, maybe you can review it after or whatever. In that video, Doug and Max, or what is his name? Doug, I think. He's
Doug.
talking
and I think
about
Max
kind of
was
offhand.
dog.
Okay, Doug. He's talking offhandedly about some of the aspects of the millennial kingdom, about, there being, sacrifices, physical healing, longer lifespans. And as he's saying this, he's not saying there's longer lifespans. And to prove that, I'm going to quote these scriptures. He doesn't do that. He's just speaking offhandedly. And Mike's basically saying, he just says, oh, he's just making stuff up. This is just these dispensationalists. They basically, it's just sci-fi for them. They're so obsessed with the kingdom that they just want to write their own fantasy. And so in the comment, I posted a verse that showed, that dispensational is used to support the idea of longer lifespan in the kingdom. It comes from Isaiah 65, right? And his response is just like, that's foolish. That's a foolish interpretation. And so I said, so what's your interpretation? And he basically says, oh, actually, it could be about the kingdom, but dispensationalism's still dumb. Like that's the kind of level he's providing. And so that I'd rather, it shows an ignorance on the subject, what we believe about that. You can pick up any dispensational book. I suggested Andy Wood's Kingdom, the Coming Kingdom, where these are all broken in sections. Each of these things, aspects that Doug's talking about, it's in there. There's the scripture verses. So don't just say we're just making stuff up. It's really dishonest. Well, it's ignorant if you don't know it. But I just want to challenge him to actually look at what the scriptures that we're saying and interact with the scriptures rather than just this paintbrush offhand call us foolish. And then when you're kind of challenged on it, you say, well, maybe it's that. It's like, that's not the energy you're bringing across in your videos when you're talking about dispensationalism. That's what I'm seeing. So I'm not saying I know more than Mike. I'm new. I'm just reading some of this stuff. I'm new in this as well, but I want to see just a next level from the other side on that point. That's my only thing. But
yeah. Well, listening to you, it made me realize how tired I am. So I'm going to end the stream when you and I'm going to be leaving at the same time you are, and we'll make a part 2 in the future soon. Do I have an after show tomorrow planned, or what's going on tomorrow for Friday? Because I may be able to go live tomorrow. Let me check my channel. Okay. No, the 11th. Oh, that's tomorrow. Yeah, so Chris Morrison's going to debate Jeff Dollar tomorrow. And we're doing the after show. 9 p.m. Okay, so I'll get home from work at 8. And so it'll be at 9. Wow.
And can you go to that? Can you go to that video real quick, just so you can see my interaction and people can pause and read, or just so they have the context?
Yeah. All right. So help me get there.
Go to his channel.
Go to Toronto's channel.
Yeah,
All right.
it's like his maybe. It's a recent one. Videos.
Is it? He
Videos.
was live. I wonder if he was evaluating us. Is
No,
it
it's under
videos?
It's videos. The videos tab, not the live tab.
It's right here. Doug, the false teacher. Why are you calling him a false teacher?
Click that. So this is the video that I watched, and then I comment. You can go to the comments.
I see he went after Paul Miles too. I think I just saw Paul Miles.
Sort by new.
Sort by new.
Yeah. Sometimes if you don't do that, not all the comments show. And then there's my comment. You can click down, extend it.
The idea of longer lifespans in the kingdom comes from Isaiah 65, 20-22. Even if you disagree with the interpretation, you sound ignorant just saying it's all made up. He said, what interpretation? He just said, I believe. You're really going to go that route? If I say I believe, I mean that's how I understand it to be true. But anyway, what he just said I believe. If he referenced the Bible, I would at least have some respect for this foolish video. But the interpretation Isaiah 65 is
so he says the interpretation's foolish.
But where's the argument against it? He's just dismissing it.
He says you're wrong.
Just because you don't cite a verse, it's a foolish video. This is a foolish argument. He says you're wrong, Taylor. The one who sounds ignorant are the dispensationalists. That's why they have to create their own schools apart from academia. Oh, okay. So, what's your point? I don't know what that means. Do the New Covenant does Covenant theology and New Covenant theology have their own schools? Yeah. Are they in academia? Yeah, they are. So what's his point there? That's why they prey on people who are undereducated in the Bible. Well, here's the thing. You're educated in the Bible at Tyndale University, yet you don't know these things that you think that these people that are uneducated should know. There's people that with their Schofield Bibles, or Janet that's read The Kingdom Come, that she knows. That's why I said that's why none of you can just give a simple explanation of why I should believe your theology. Well, you can't give a simple explanation for why one should believe covenant theology or new covenant theology. He's just claiming that it's not simple. It's confusing. It's not simple. You need to use more scripture. Isn't that the same arguments people use against me about the chart? And how they dismiss my free grace arguments in my debates? And you said, okay, what do you think those verses are talking about? He said, actually, I forgot what this video was about. Isaiah 65 might be about the millennial kingdom.
So
if you know that, then why won't you delete yourself? Yeah, why didn't he should delete this
thread? That interpretation of Isaiah 65:20 is foolish. And now here, when I ask him for his interpretation, it's might be about the millennial kingdom.
That wasn't my main focus in the video, but this was still bad and breeds foolishness like this. He's not even he didn't even
he's so wrapped up in just attacking that he can't even.
Right.
He's just throwing claims out.
Right.
So that's where I challenge him.
Do better. Sort of like what I did to Dit recently. He said, your emotionalism is evident. You call me on my emotions too, so I understand this. You claim dispensations are just making stuff up about aspects of the millennial kingdom. Then you're presented with scripture about it, and now it's, well, it might be about the kingdom, but still dumb. Why don't you pick up Andy Wood's book about the kingdom and read or refute that instead of these low-hanging fruit videos? Be more academic. You have been on here way too long to be saying might be, could be, possibly about what the Old Testament teaches about the kingdom. Yeah. And that fit right along with what we've done in this stream. And you wrote this before I said, hey, we're going to look at Academia EDU, so that kind of, that's great.
And look, the Academia EDU thing, we're not saying, like, I don't want it to come off like we're digging his, his seminary or anything. We were doing that to get a taste of, has he taken classes about this?
Right.
What is his education background? It's not to go, oh, your degree's bad, you have no credentials. That's not.
Look what Nathan said. Toronto is reacting to y'all right now. Well, that's good.
Good.
And I'll catch him later. I got to do an after show tomorrow. But we'll continue reacting to this, and hopefully he'll take the feedback that we've mentioned and clarification, and he will use it in the next analysis of the videos of PB series. Is there anything you want to say to the audience, Taylor?
No, thanks for tuning in, guys. Let's just continue to be Bereans.
All right. God bless, guys. Y'all have a good night. Check out more content, old stuff and new, and share this with others if you think it was benefit. God bless.
God bless.